Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Caribbean Rhythm Podcast. I am your host, KRYZ. Today, we have a wonderful guest, Cat Coore from Jamaica, legendary band Third World, multi-talented musician, wonderful person all around. We have a great show ahead. Thank you for joining us today, Cat.
And thanks very much, Mark. I appreciate being able to do this podcast.
We're going to get right on into it. Tell us what best describes you.
Okay, I'm Mr Cat Coore, and I am a musician primarily. I love music primarily, sport. I love cricket. I love watching football. I love to cook. I'm a good chef. But, most of all, I love my guitar, my cello. And I have to tell you, I love being a very patriotic Jamaican.
So, Cat, tell us a little bit about your childhood and where you grew up.
I grew up in Kingston, Jamaica. I was born in 1956. My father, Mr. David Coore. My mother, Mrs. Rita Coore, nee Innis. She was an Innis from Trinidad. And they met some 10 years before that in McGill. The both of them attended McGill University. And shortly thereafter, they both got scholarships to go to England. Dad went to Oxford, and my mom went to the Royal College of Music, where she studied music, and she also studied broadcasting. And so I had a very interesting parents, I would say. They were from completely different fields. My dad studied law and became a barrister, and my mom was just total entertainment. And I think both of those things really paid off for me. In my early childhood times, those are my memories. My mom being on the radio, like in 1965, 66, she had a program called Concert Hall, and by that time, I had kind of really gotten into music already. I got into music from a very early age. So that sort of stuff, my memories are really wonderful about that time. Growing up, being before, the ages of 4 to like 10, was all about music, was all about intrigue, in playing music and loving music.
Wow, that's very interesting. So you really did grow up surrounded by music. Your mother, she seems like the influence and the one who really introduced you to it all. That's very fascinating. How about you tell us about your formal education and what did you study and why?
I think most of the time that I was attending school, I was also playing music, which was very fascinating and very good for me because it really set a platform for me to really have a musical career. I mean, I started very, very young, and it really helped to propel my thinking into being a musician and into what it takes to perform, being a performer too, because that's very important. You have to be very comfortable playing in front of people or you will never make it as a performer. So I think my formative years, I really had a nice little push from both my parents in terms of like good schooling, good education, and when time came to study music, I was sent to one of the greatest, Mrs. Noel Foster Davis. And I would have studied with her right up until about 1968, 69, when I would have joined in a circle. So I had very good formative training, good education, and, I hope it paid off.
Well, I'm most definite that it all did pay off. How about you tell us about any memorable moments from your education, anything that really stood out to you?
Now, my schooling, there was no question about the fact that my educational skills were not fantastic. I was very good at English. I was very good at literature, geography, and history, but the sciences blew me away. And I'll never forget going into a physics exam one day, and the teacher, Mr. Brent, said, "Today we're having a test." And he put the papers out on all of our desks, and I wrote the date and the name, and that was the end. I did not answer one single question on that paper. And he said to me, "Mr. Coore, do not come back to my class. I expect to see you sitting under that tree with your guitar. Do not come back here." So Memories like that are cute, you know. I mean, not for my physics acumen, but for memories and for good times and for things that really meant something in my life, you know. And staying under the tree with the guitar helped, eh? I think so.
Yeah, man, Cat. Really does sound like we had a similar education. Probably had a similar report card too. How about you tell us, how were you introduced to music and how old were you? And roughly, if you could give us some timelines as to how you were progressing and everything.
I was introduced to music at about 4, which would have put the timeline at 1960. And my mommy, as I said, you know, in those days we had what's known as a gramophone. And a gramophone, you know, with records, which is, nowadays people crave it because we've come full circle now. A gramophone is now a computer. So I really, my mom really played so much music of all different kinds, from Ella Fitzgerald to Mighty Sparrow to, you know, Pablo Casals on the cello. That's how I first heard the cello, and really fell in love with the sound of it. And I expressed even from that age that I wanted to play the cello. And it just so happened that my godmother, Mrs. Vera Movie, she heard about my love for the cello, and when she came from England on one of her trips, she brought a cello for me. You have to understand that in 1960, when somebody went to England, that was not like, you know, going to England, no. I mean, I'm pretty sure she took a boat over, not a plane, and would have come back, would have taken her a couple of weeks to get back to Jamaica. But I still believe that that cello coming into my life was what really, you know, inspired me, moved me towards, you know, being the person that I am now. And I'm very thankful that I can play a little bit of the cello. And, you know, my guitar skills, I really honed them from the time I was 12, but I really had been playing string instruments from I was about 5. So I had a good head start, you know. So other kids in the neighborhood who picked up the guitar at 13 or 14, they had it much rougher than me because I already was on my way, you know. So I give thanks for that a lot.
Very interesting. How about you tell us about what it was like being a child musician, playing from such a young age, and what were some of the highlights you could tell us about?
As a childhood musician, definitely playing the Swan for Princess Anne at King's House. There's no way I can top that. I aced every exam. I did very, very well in concerts, you know. I was thrown to the wolves by my mother into auditoriums full of girls at a girls' school one time, which was terrifying, but I still got through that one, you know, with some amount of love and affection. And I think the highlight, though, was definitely King's House playing for Princess Anne. And the reviews are there. You can look up online. That would have been 1967 or 68. For sure, I was about 9 or 10. So I figure it's about 1966, 67. And it was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. I worked extremely hard to play, and I worked to the point where, as a youngster, I thought I'd actually forgotten what I had to play because I was remembering it so well that I don't know if any one of you can dig this experience of knowing something and practicing it so hard that you actually start to get things wrong, you know. But that was my experience at the time. I worked very, very hard for that performance, and it was successful. I played this one flawlessly. That's what the newspaper said, flawlessly.
Flawlessly. So you know we had to talk Third World. So how about you tell us about Third World? How did that all start? What was the beginning, the origins?
Okay, so in 1969, I was very fortunate. I joined up with Inner Circle at the tender age of 13. Now, this was very unusual because most of the people in the band were much older than me, and even the Lewis brothers, they were not the oldest ones. There was people like Funky Brown, there were people like Bruce Ruffin, you know. These were great singers, and they were older boys to us. And from 1969 back to 72, going into 73, I stayed with Inner Circle. We were a cover band. We did covers and we played in hotels and we played for Kiwanis balls and we did anything we could do to keep the band financially alive, you know. We didn't have a lot of expenses because a lot of the equipment was given to Roger and Ian Lewis by their father, who was quite a successful person in his own right. And sometime around 1972, I became really engaged in the whole Bob Marley thing. I really, Catch a Fire changed my life, really. When I heard that guitar solo on Concrete Jungle, it just made me just feel that that's what I want to do. And that's exactly what I did, because I was playing guitar, but I was playing mainly like funk, playing like the Meters and, you know, and Booker T and the MGs and stuff like that. But looking at reggae and rock merging together was really a vision that I saw, and I wanted to pursue that. And so, you know, I broke away from Inner Circle, and Prilly Hamilton broke away with me originally. Prilly was one of the singers in Inner Circle. This was 1973. And we formed the idea of the band. And at the time, a lot of things were happening in my life, because my dad had just become elected in 1972 as Deputy Prime Minister of Jamaica. And under the stewardship of Michael Manley, who was then the Prime Minister, and my Uncle Michael, you know, someone who I loved dearly, you know. And this was happening at a time in Jamaica when it was a very radical time for us, you know. It was very socialist thinking, very, very, very progressive thinking, you know, equal rights for women, things like that that were unheard of before. So this was a very interesting time, and it was a really good time for us to start the band, because there was a platform for us to express ourselves, you know, what we were seeing as youngsters growing up. And, you know, we were being influenced by Rastafarianism, by Bob Marley and his whole thing. And that was definitely a big part of everything for every kid my age, 17 at that time, growing up in Jamaica, you know. So it was just a very good time for me and for all the people who eventually came into the group, you know. After a few months of just a couple of us, we were joined by Ibu, who is part of the Genesis. We were joined by Richard Daly, who is part of the Genesis. Carl Barover is part of the Genesis. And in 1973, August, we did our first show at a place called the Flamingo Hotel in New Kingston. That's the first one where I really can say that was really the first show. We might have had some other little preps, but that was the real first boy. And you know, we all had on plaid suits and bow ties, and you know, which was a trip. But anyway, the pictures are there. But this was the beginning of something really, really wonderful, and the band just continued from strength to strength. People became more engaged, became more committed, and eventually it worked out that all of us gave our lives to the band, and that's why 50 years on today, we're still around, you know. We're still together. I heard a commentator on the radio said, those boys are 400 years old and they're still getting gigs. They're just coming from New Zealand. I'm like, wow, you know, 400 years old. That's a good description.
So, how did you guys manage to bust out and go global and make it all over the world? Who helped you guys do that?
I would say that transition in a way was natural, because the music was becoming more and more acceptable abroad. But definitely I have to say that the launch was Island Records and Chris Blackwell, who, you know, was the president of Island Records. And in 1975, after the band had done a couple of years of struggling, you know, but we had one or two really nice things happen for us along the way. We had weekend gigs in Montego Bay, where we could showcase ourselves to a slightly different kind of thing than just playing dance music. You know, we showcased ourselves on the poolside of the Holiday Inn to a really receptive set of people who were coming to Jamaica, didn't know a lot about reggae, but were just into coming down to the Caribbean and just experiencing, you know, smoking a draw of herb and, you know, that kind of stuff. And By 1975, the band had really had taken on its own kind of image, and we were lucky to get a chance to go to England, and we slept on a friend's floor until we got 1 and 2 gigs, and then Chris Blackwell came to one of the clubs and saw us, and he decided, yes, I'm going to go with these guys, I'm going to sign them, and that really is the launching pad for Third World. Now, following up on that, he wanted us to open for Bob Marley at the Lyceum. And this is 1975, and that really, really launched the band. I mean, that put us, even in our own minds, we were different people after we opened up for Bob Marley. You know, we saw ourselves differently. We started writing better songs. We started doing everything. Our presentation became better. Everything. We practiced more. We rehearsed more. We spent more time together. And we were recording also, you know, our first album at Hammersmith, and, you know, Bob was there, and, you know, we were lucky because most of the time when we were in England, Bob was always around, and he was always a fatherly kind of figure, a big brother kind of figure to us, and it was special, and his rise to prowess was like a meteor, you know what I mean? There's no stopping him, so it was always good to be around him. You know, two years later, we were doing 96 Degrees in the Shade. It was the same thing. We were in the same studio. This was at Basing Street. And those times were very special to all the Third World members who still can remember that. Some of them are unfortunately gone, you know, God rest their soul. But those of us who can remember that, you know, it's a very special time for us. And we had a lot of success because 96 Degrees in the Shade is a great song, and we went on to do Now That We Found Love, and we went on to do some great songs, you know, so give thanks for that, you know what I mean?
Oh, that's very fascinating. Having Bob Marley as a big brother to help mentor you, Chris Blackwell in the mix of it all too, that's fantastic. I must mention too, God rest his soul, but Ibo was my piano teacher and my jazz ensemble. Oh, was it? Yes, jazz ensemble teacher in the Manly. So God rest his soul, what an influence he was to us all there. I must ask, what are some of your most memorable experiences in a band? What are your most memorable band experiences?
I'd say there are many experiences that are super memorable to me. But I would say that the two that stand out the most, I think, is playing with Stevie Wonder, recording with Stevie Wonder. I think that was fantastic. And as far as shows are concerned, playing with Stevie Wonder was 1981. It started in, and we finished the album in 82. I think that was one of the most fantastic times for the band, and we had Tried Your Love, a big hit, you know. And also at that time we were given a chance to really play on a big stage. We played at Amnesty International Festival at Pasadena Rose Bowl, and it was just absolutely like our first really big, huge concert. And then after that, you know, we did another one, which was for AIDS and stuff. We did that one at Giant Stadium in New Jersey, and that was about a year later, like maybe, you know, 84, 83, 84, and that. You know, that those experiences are just tremendous to me. But there are many along the way, you know, playing with Bob Marley was one of them, touring with Santana, you know, being on the same bill with many, many great groups, you know, Toots and the Maytals, you know, Michael Jackson, you know, the people who you look up to in your days coming up. And you get a chance to actually interact with them sometimes, and also be on the same stage with them. Just sharing the same stage with them is a hell of an experience, you know.
True legends, all of you, all interacting, titans of the industry. Very impressive. These are all names that I grew up, my parents grew up with, I grew up with, future generations will grow up with. But I have a question for you. What is your biggest record as Third World?
I have three choices of the biggest records that we have. Now That We Found Love, Tried Your Love, and 96 Degrees in the Shade. All three songs are very popular and well known. but they for different reasons. 96 Degrees is more like an anthem. You know, it's like a story of a great martyr from Jamaica, Paul Bogle. You know, it's a very story oriented. Try to Love is spiritually oriented. You know, it's giving people hope. If you lose your way, I'll lead you with my love. You know, it's God talking to us. It's a very special kind of spirituality. And Now That We Found Love is a dance record, you know. So the three of them are very popular songs for Third World, but for three different reasons. All of them have good messages. All of them have very good messages, but I think in the different communities in which they're popular is where the difference really lies, you know. But I would say that all in all, those are the three records that I really would say are absolutely just dynamite for Third World.
Where did you record 96 Degrees? And when was that?
96 Degrees in the Shade is recorded in 1976 into 77, and we recorded it in Jamaica at Harry J Studios and also in London at Basing Street Studios.
Now, I'm sure there's an interesting story behind this one, but where and when did you record Now That We Found Love?
We recorded Now That We Found Love in 1978. And the interesting story about that song is that we played the song, we covered the version of the OJs. And then we were recording in Nassau, and we just suddenly started to get a groove going and a different look at Now That We Found Love. And it turned into a smash record, you know. It's great. It's great to do something like that.
But this song wasn't something that you guys had prepared. This was something you were just messing around with or you're just jamming with, right?
Oh, totally. It was a jam. Now That We Found Love was a jam. It was a jam in the studio, though. So there were microphones. Everything was set up. So, you know, it was recorded right there and then, the jam. And we went back the following day to try and get it, you know, done properly, quote unquote. But we just never got it better than the jam. So we just used the jam and just tidied it up, did certain things to it, and, you know, and overdubs and stuff. That's how you have that whole long first part. Make Natty Shook. That was never a part of it. That was just Rugg scatting at the front. And then after, when we listened back, we said, we can't throw away that, man. There's no way we can throw away that. We have to keep that.
And Try Your Love. What's the story with that one?
We were recording with Stevie Wonder in Los Angeles in 1982. This is a year after Bob died. And we had done some songs with him. We had done some reggae-oriented songs with him. And Larkin Arnold, who was the president of CBS Records at the time, who had just signed us, he came along and he said, look, to Stevie, he said, Stevie, I want something in the pocket for these guys, man. So that's how Tragedy came about, and Steve got around the piano, turned the drum machine into what then was the going dance beat, and he just started to create the song. And the song took time. It took its own time to come, but it came. And the vocals were written by Melody McCulley. She, of course, with Stevie, but she's the one that came and really tidied up all of the lyrics for Stevie and really made the song, you know, what it is. It's a great experience and a great honor to have worked with Stevie Wonder. Great, great honor. And the pleasure is all mine. It's all the rest of the bands, you know, for every one of us who enjoyed it at the time. We got a platinum record for it in Japan. You know, we're very proud of what we did with Stevie Wonder. Very proud.
So how about we look at the history side of things now? Back in the day, Jamaica would have been in a lot of turmoil with Bob Marley and his concert all the way up until he was shot. What were your experiences back in those times and how things were and the turmoil of it all?
In 1978, experience of being with him, being around him when the shooting took place is something that it's not for a 25-minute interview. I would have to sit down for like 25 hours to tell you that. But suffice it to say, it was a hell of an experience. It was a time in which I wasn't quite sure what was happening in Jamaica. It's exactly 1976. We weren't quite sure what was really happening in Jamaica in terms of, there was an election, very violent election, and it was a time of some amount of disruption politically in our country. It's a time that most of us are not very proud of. There was a lot of killing, lots of senseless killing, and it sort of set the stage for what happened to Bob. And right after that, I didn't see him for a while because he went to England and he just kind of took off, and we took off on our own, on our own roads and tried our best to just do what we had to do, and ended up in Nassau recording Now That We Found Love. But that period of time there for that whole Smile Jamaica concert and stuff was a very intense period of time, and I think we're all the better for it. And I think Bob was better for it too. Unfortunately, everybody knows about his demise, but he didn't live very much longer after that. So, but it was an experience. It was an experience, and it's been spoken about a lot. But just from my point, it was really something to go through at that time. It was very, very, very special.
If you could just expand on what it was like performing in that concert. What was the experience?
We had been asked to perform on the Smile Jamaica concert, so Third World was performing anyway. After the shooting, we didn't really know whether we would perform or not. But we still went there. The park was totally rammed. All the instruments were up. The PA system was up. Everything was ready. And I spoke on the radio, on the walkie-talkie radio to Bob, and did my best to convince him to come, because I told him everybody wanted to see him, and I didn't really feel any fear. I really didn't. I thought the fear side of things was over the night of the shooting. I didn't think there was any reason for any more fear. So anyway, eventually it worked out that he came, and members of the band, including myself, were asked to fill in. And I filled in with bass for a song or two, and then I played guitar, and Tyrone Downey came. And from that point of view, that was also a great experience for me too. But at the time, things happened so fast, I didn't really know what to think about it at the time, really. But now when I look back at it, and now when I see all the things written about it, all the stories and everything, and the movie and all that, I realize that, it was a serious moment as well,
Wow, those are really some hard times and intense struggles you guys were going through back then. But you guys pushed through and endured, and you're all better for it. Speaking of which, what are you guys up to now? What's Third World doing?
Third World these days is just recording more music and playing and experiencing how wonderful it is to have 50 years in the business. Now we have kids, my son plays bass with Damian Marley. My other son was with Chronix for a long time. And, it's a joy. It's a joy to see, the road and the new generation coming in. And I think Third World has more music to play, even though we're 50 years this year. We have plenty more music to give the world, and that's what we're up to. We're trying very hard to record and do as much work as we can, and it's really a joy to celebrate 50 years and to see the kids, how they're, how great they are and how they have taken our inspiration and turned it into their lives. I'm very proud of them, and
Now we're nearing the end of the podcast. How about you give us your contact information? Give us your socials, give us how people could reach Third World, people could reach you, what the websites are.
If you want to book Third World, it's thirdworldband.com, and we are on social media platforms, and on the social media platforms, it's at Third World Band. So those are the places where you can see us, but if you want to book us, please do. thirdworldband.com. Lots of love, and thanks for having me.
Thank you, Cat Coore. And a big thank you to everyone else who joined us on the Caribbean Rhythm podcast. My name is KRYZ, Mark, KRYZ, MRK. You can find me everywhere under that name. And thank you very much for joining us. I hope you all enjoyed.